This is Jamey with Stonemaier Games, and today I am excited to talk about my favorite mechanisms in a game that just won the Kennerspiel, and I just happened to play for the first time yesterday. It lined up amazingly well. This is a game that I bought and played just yesterday, and that is Paleo. I have some photos here because while I bought the game, I lent it to a coworker just yesterday, so I only have photos of our gameplay yesterday. Paleo has a lot going on, a lot of really clever mechanisms. It is a cooperative game where you play cavemen and cavewomen, cave people, trying to achieve certain goals laid out by that specific scenario. There are different combinations of cards that you can use, different scenarios, and ultimately you're trying to survive and not die. And actually, let me jump right to the end real quick, because one of my favorite mechanisms in the game is how you account for a victory and how you show those victory points. I don't have a good photo of it here, but instead of, like, this is a point-driven game. You are essentially trying to get, I believe, 5 points together as a group, but instead of having them abstracted as just, okay, a point, maybe a victory point track, they are represented in the game by pieces of a puzzle, or pieces of a cave painting. They're tiles that show a cave painting, and the first time you get a point, you gain one of these tiles, you put it in your cave. You have completed part of your cave painting. And then the next time you complete a goal, you get another piece of that cave painting and you add it to that part of the board until hopefully you gain all 5 tiles and have completed your painting and you win the game before you have, I believe, 5 or 6 skulls, whatever the skull count is for your player count. We lost in our game. We had the skull thing happen, but I love the visual of building this cave painting over the course of the game. It's not even really mechanical, but having so few points in the game itself, only 5 points, and having them represented in that thematic way, I thought was a really, really nice touch. However, the game also has some really clever other mechanisms that I really like. One of the core thing you're doing in the game simultaneously with the other players is that you have this deck of cards, the stack of cards that's randomly shuffled up and dealt out evenly to all players, or as evenly as possible. And on your turn, at the same time as other players, you draw 3 of these cards. You only look at the backs of the cards. You choose one of them, and then you reveal it simultaneously with the other players. And there's 2 things that happen in here that are really interesting. One is that the backs of the cards give you hints as to what's on those locations. Oftentimes, it might just be a river like this. There are a lot of cards that look identical to this. They are just rivers, and you get to see that river. So you're essentially saying, I'm going to the river right now. And you know what a river looks like, but what you also know is the types of things that you might find at the river. You don't know exactly what you'll find there. You might find fish there. You might find berries near the bank of the river, things like that. You don't know exactly what's there, but the game tells you these are the types of things you might find at the river. So you might choose that over another card if at that moment you know some of the things that are in a forest and you know you don't need those things as much. You might not go to the forest. You might not go to the mountain. You'll choose the river there. But even on the back of some of the other cards, there are also very clear images of what is there right now. For example, there are some cards that have woolly mammoths on the back. Because that's what the game is saying. It was around at that period of time. I didn't fact check that, but I believe so. And thematically, the idea is if you are saying, I'm going over there to the forest, because I can see a woolly mammoth right now and I want to interact with that woolly mammoth, you can clearly see it thematically, but also see it visually on the actual back of the card. So I really like this choice that you are making privately, but you can also discuss that at the same time as other players. I love the collaboration that arises from that, because you're looking at what other players are choosing and you're thinking, okay, this is something that that might work well with these things that other players are doing. So I really like that element of the game. I think it could even be leaned into even further in a game that shows even more detailed information on the back of the card about things that you might find once you enter this forest, like hints at things that you can see of this specific forest, but not exactly what you'll find there. A couple other mechanisms that I really like. There's a lot of clever mechanisms in the game, because after you select that card, you flip it over, and it gives you some options. Here are some examples here. So this example says that you have 2 options. One, there's almost always a cooperation element. You can just help another player. You can use your skills, your caveman and woman, to help another player. And you can choose that, and you don't get to do anything else on the card. Or you have options like this, where you can say you found this dodo, and you can kill the dodo if you have a spear skill, a fighting skill. You have to discard a few cards from the top of your deck because it takes time to do this. That represents time in the game. And you have to permanently remove this card from this game. You're not tearing it up or anything. It's not a legacy game, but you are removing this card. And I love how all this interacts with the theme. So you basically have a choice. You have stumbled upon a dodo in the forest. You can pay attention to it and kill it and remove it from the world forever and get the benefits from it. Or you can just ignore it and help the other players. perfect thematic essence here of the choices that you have. Similar to this with the trees. With trees, you can spend a lot of skill to chop down the trees. It takes more time, so you have to discard more cards from your deck, and you get 3 wood. Or maybe you can't do that by yourself, and you can't help another player. Or at that time, you could just discard 2 cards from the top of your deck and get 1 wood, or you can help another player. Lots of interesting choices in these cards, and how you have to collaborate actively with other players because you can constantly help other players rather than doing the tasks that you thought you were going to set out to do in this turn. The other thing that's really cool here is you can see on both these cards they cost time, or they could cost time, which removes cards from the top of your deck. It speeds up the round a little bit, it gives you fewer options. And the really cool thing here, in my opinion, is the element of discovery that happens in the game, because you can see these 2 different decks of cards. I wanted to show these to you for a reason. If I, like with this tree, I guess with any of these options, if I choose to interact with this tree, I'll put it on this pile. Same with the dodo, unless I kill the dodo, I'll put it on this pile. Face up, discard. However, any cards that I discard as a result of using these cards, I put face down here, and I don't know what's on the other side of those cards yet. And so throughout the game, you learn more and more information about what's actually in this deck of cards. And even going into the last round of the game, we didn't make it that far, but even several rounds into the game, while we had some information about certain cards, we know that if we go to the forest, that we might see this fruit card again. We also have uncertainty. We have things that we're still discovering late in that game because the cards have been discarded face down. Have I seen this river card before, or was it another river card? I don't know. And I love that element of discovery. So I'm describing all these mechanisms. I know it's taken a little bit here, but I want to describe them all together because I think they fit into a really, really nice element of discovery in this game. Both the discovery of choosing a place to go, discovering what's on the other side of the card, and throughout the game as you continually play these cards throughout the round and then reshuffle this deck and deal the cards back out to players, you're rediscovering or discovering for the first time, while you're also gaining more information about what's in this deck of cards itself. In fact, the game itself encourages you not to just look through this deck of cards at any given time, especially not before the game, so you can discover it like these cave people would have done back in their time. Really, really clever combination of mechanisms here in Paleo, and obviously I think some people agree because it won the Kennerspiel. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Paleo. I'd love to hear yours in the comments below, or if you have any examples of games that use discovery, elements of discovery really, really well, and how they tie into the mechanisms. I'd love to hear about that in the comments below too. Thanks.